If you turn through my history, you would see me in May of 2009 sitting at a coffee shop with my parents getting ready to graduate from college. I was at this cusp. I was getting a degree in communication design, which is like marketing and design. I had a minor in creative writing. I had a book that was about to go out on submission, The Near Witch, and I had no idea what I was going to do next. I remember sitting there gripping this cup of tea, sitting across from my parents, and thinking, what am I going to do with my life? I mean, a college graduation, it's one of those moments you're supposed to choose a course, and I did not know which course I was going to choose. Obviously, I had this degree, but I also had this book, and I had this hope that the book was going to sell, and I found myself very much in transition, as I've been several times since then. But I remember this was the first major transition. And I sat there, and my parents have always been the most supportive of my writing aspirations, and for that I have to thank them right off the bat, because they never were like, when are you going to stop writing and just focus on design? They were so supportive. Near Which was going to go on submission within the next week or so, and they said, so what are you going to write next? Because they assumed, obviously, I was going to keep doing this. Even if I had to get another job at the same time, I was going to try to make this work. And at the time, I only had these kinds of vague notions. And it all kind of spilled out in pieces, not a formed idea, but these little tiny elements. I knew that I wanted to write about an old hotel. And I knew I wanted to write about a family moving there. And I knew that they were running away from something. And I knew that the mom wanted to open a bakery. And I knew that the daughter was keeping secrets. And these were only little pieces that I had for it. What would come to coalesce over the next 3 years is that, they were moving to this hotel because they were running away from their son's death. And the secrets that she was keeping were so much more elaborate than I ever thought they would be. But the seeds of it, I remember so concretely happening in that coffee shop as I just kind of rambled about what I would like to do. I knew I wanted to write a large world because the Near Witch is very small, very insular, and I knew that I wanted to write something set in modern day or close to, because I had hated not being able to use any terminology, like any modern terminology, when writing the Near Witch, and so I was like hell-bent on using the term guyliner because it was symbolic for me that I could do that in a book. I have a little bit of a whimsical writing style, and I felt that it set me in this timeless period, but timelessness is a very hard thing to manage in books, especially in YA. You have a whole lot of potential for currency, and it's very hard. And so I was like, it was like a moment of defiance for me. It's like, and there's gonna be guyliner. I had no idea in what context there would be guyliner, but I was like, I'm going to use this word. And guyliner ends up being a nickname for the main boy in the book, who's not a love interest, he's a like interest, he's a friend, and his name is Wesley Ayers, but he wears guyliner. And so, but the point is, there were just all of these little pieces at that point. Just the smallest seeds, and I remember that, they're like, oh, that sounds cool. And I was like, yeah, who knows if anything will come of it. And I remember that by the time I had graduated and by the time we had driven back to Nashville, I had started writing it. I still didn't know all of the elements. I still didn't know how everything fit together, but the seams were starting to cinch. The pieces were starting to find an order. And that was so incredibly exciting. It would still take, that was May of 2009. And this is January of 2013, so it would still take quite a while. I would write an entire version of that book and put it aside. It was called All Things Between at the time. And I would put it aside and write an entire sequel for The Near Witch, which obviously is not on shelves, but exists. So maybe one day. And then I would come back to All Things Between, and over the next 2 years, when I was living in England, especially, All Things Between would become The Archived, and then The Archived is almost here. So, but it all started in that little coffee shop with the idea of an old hotel and a bakery and a family running away. So you just never know. Sometimes you have to gather up a lot of little pieces, and then they find ways to fit together. And next week's video will be the last video, and it will talk about the archived and its moments in history along the way, and I am very excited. And 7 days, 1 week, 1 week. Oh, someone saw it on shelves. Someone saw it on a shelf, and I freaked out a little bit, but it's okay. We're almost there.